We have reserved 3 spots in our schedule to hear from GreenCorps members that have worked in various capacities around the state, really, because we wanted to hear from them on the kind of projects that they're working on and see what they're doing. The GreenCorps is a program part of the AmeriCorps program, and members serve for 11 months, full-time, 11 months appointments. And they work either at educational institutions, government institutions, or environmental nonprofits in a variety of areas: air pollutant reduction, community readiness and outreach, green infrastructure improvements, waste recycling, reduction, and organics management. And the program runs from mid-September through mid-August each year, engaging 42 members every year, which brings us this week to Jaron. Jaron tells me that he has already been around quite a bit. He grew up in Ohio, right? New York, and New York, upstate New York. Yeah. And then he went to Washington University, yeah, before coming here. And he tells me that last winter was his first in Minnesota, and it came as something of a shock at 30 below zero, if you remember. Oh, a long time ago now, right? A little bit different now. Jaron's going to talk to us about the work that he's been doing with the Anoka Conservation District. If you have not looked at the Anoka Conservation District website, do so. It's a great website. I really enjoyed looking at that website. He's going to be telling us, well, you can read the title yourself, Building Bridges, actually affecting environmental change through behavior modification. Encapsulate it a little bit. Jaron, thanks for coming down and talking to us today.
Of course, thank you. Thank you. Cool.
And if you go to click and it's not working, it's because I clicked on WebEx, which let me get it fixed for you. So.
That's good. Cool. So my notes are on PowerPoint over there, so I might jump around and be like,
all right,
at some point. But, I think I should have it. Fine. So yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about really more the implementation end of how do we affect behavior change. I think there's a lot of really great research around how to affect behavior change, but it doesn't always necessarily make a very clear connection to how do we do that at really the boots on the ground level, local government. What is our role in helping our citizens to become more sustainable in their lifestyles and choices, and have a deeper connection to the environment around them. So initially, just kind of want to start off flipping through some things, trying to illustrate the fact that some of the reason why we have issues with individuals or companies or whoever either polluting or living in a way that's not really sustainable isn't due to the fact that people don't care. That's not true. From what I've found personally in my life and through just some basic research, I think most of you have probably seen the Minnesota Water Values study. It was really cool, just showing Minnesotans really care about water. It's very important to people here, both for the purpose of living via clean and safe drinking water, and ensuring that future generations have water, but also recreating and experiencing the outdoors through water is really important to Minnesotans.
Go ahead. No? I just did it.
There we go. Cool. In addition to that, we've seen an increase in national and state park visitors. This is a typo I'm going to point out. It's national park visitations here, not visitors, is what it should say. But we've, both in Minnesota and at the national level, over the past about 10 years, there's been a big increase in the amount of people going to parks. People want to be outside more. Yeah. There's really strong support for the Endangered Species Act, despite the fact that a lot of people think this is a really controversial piece of legislation. This is a series of studies that have been going on since 1996, documenting the national support for the Endangered Species Act. You can see it's in that like that 37 somewhat support, 53 strongly support as of 2015. So that's like quite a large majority of the population support what is often considered controversial conservation bill. But again, just harping on the fact that people do in fact care. Next one. Even harp on this fact further, bipartisan passage of the Conservation Management and Recreation Act, even in this really divided Congress, we've still found ways to find common ground on really caring about our natural resources, wanting to be able to experience the outdoors and ensure that future generations get to do that. Cool. Even the majority of people believe in global warming and climate change. So I think that really it's pretty clear that people care and people want to see their environment affected in a positive way. But where the disconnect comes in is that people don't always know how to do that, or they just simply don't feel empowered in their decisions. And so despite those things I showed you earlier, we still know that Nonpoint source pollution and aquatic invasive species are threatening the integrity of Minnesota's water. Invasive species, climate change, habitat loss, and a whole suite of other things are threatening Minnesota's native ecology. There are a lot of challenges that folks who work in this agency and the DNR and many other agencies have to deal with going forward for managing our natural resources. And a big part of that, especially because Nonpoint source pollution and aquatic invasive species, a lot of these things are related to individual decision-making and behaviors. We have to be working as governments and various agencies to be addressing these things, because we cannot simply do it through just regulation and controlling people's businesses or decisions. That have to come through a lot of personal decisions made on part by citizens. So that's a really nebulous and scary idea. Like, how do we talk to people about how they can do better for the environment? How do we reach millions and millions of people and convince them to change their individual behaviors? Because there's only so many people who work in outreach and education, only so much money available from the government. So a lot of research has been done too on how do we facilitate positive behavior change. We know a few things about it, that just conveying the facts isn't enough. Just saying that, oh, you need to reduce your carbon emissions isn't enough to convince someone or get someone or to change their behavior. We also know that people are best at changing their behavior when they're motivated intrinsically. So what that means is that by comparison, external motivators, extrinsic motivation is not as effective. It will create short-term behavior change. Someone may cut down on their energy use for a challenge that offers a reward at the end, or cut down on their energy use because their neighbors are expecting them to participate in this activity. But if that motivation for what their activity isn't motivated from an internal desire, it's not going to necessarily be a sustainable behavior change. And that's been shown pretty clearly through a lot of research. So, but again, that's a really nebulous idea. How do we, again, reach people to where we meet them at their values and show them that their values align with behavior changes that will help sustain the natural resources we were talking about, all those things that we've shown that people actually do care about. So to really take that broad overview, high level, look at outreach and education and behavior change. And then I kind of want to dial in a little bit on how Minnesota GreenCorps and myself and other GreenCorps members have worked to try to address this idea and issue of motivating behavior change. And how that there's really no silver bullet either. It's going to be a multitude of ideas and methods, and it's not going to be the same for every organization or agency. It's going to be really different depending on the people you're talking to and the resources you have, and a whole other host of things. So yeah, Mark gave a little bit of background in Minnesota GreenCorps. I'm pretty sure most of you are probably, is anyone not familiar with GreenCorps? Cool. Yeah, it's a good program. Yeah, there's like about 39 of us that are going to be wrapping up our project at the end of August. Mark mentioned these focus areas. It's a really great opportunity for recent graduates to kind of get their feet wet in the natural resources or just environmental world in general. So I'm kind of like run through some of my community work in the conservation district, talk about how these projects that I worked on, I tried to integrate these ideas of motivating intrinsic behavior, as well as plain language communication, so that we're giving people the facts so they understand the science, but we're doing that in a way that's understandable to everyone, and also meets people at their emotional level, or meet them with their values, and help try to motivate some real change. So the first big project I worked on in the Conservation District was these conservation planning workshops. The idea behind this was that we wanted to reach landowners in Anoka County who lived in areas that were what we believe to be priority conservation areas. So this typically meant landowners who had property bordering a wilderness management area, bordering the Cedar Creek Ecosystem Science Reserve, bordering some of our county parks, places like that where there was large contiguous areas of undeveloped land that still had some, if not all, remaining native ecosystems. And so we used several different data sets from the DNR to create a short list of Anoka County properties that were in the 5 to 10 acre range, because we wanted to target these mid-sized landowners who might not get help from organizations down here in cities like Metro Blooms, but also aren't qualifying for some of the larger grant money that's available through the DNR for conservation projects. Kind of wanted to reach this audience that is on the fringes of development, and kind of try to show them that, especially in a lot of places in Anoka County, that there is a lot of really great ecological value. And we wanted to show, to demonstrate to people, and tell them, this property that you own is really special for XYZ reason, and really empower them to feel the ability to preserve their land, use their land for the best possible uses for the conservation of, whether it be rare plants, endangered species, whatever they really care about, but be able to use their land in the best way possible. So we created these natural resource maps for landowners, invited folks to these workshops where we got short presentations on a couple of different topic areas in natural resources. So we had someone chat a little bit about wetland regulation, we had someone talk about invasive species and invasive species control, but the vast majority of the workshops were either one-on-one or two-on-one, basically consultations with a natural resources professional. And so this gave folks an opportunity to just get all their questions out there about things they want to do to their property. Because the reality of this is that this workshop self-selected for folks who wanted to do something good with their property for our ecology in Anoka County, but they weren't really sure about what they were doing. And so this allowed us to have this one-on-one or two-on-one time to help connect them with where they could get cost share money for projects, how they could get where they could buy trees, where they could buy plants, where they could find folks who would be able to help them, or contractors they could hire to do either like a pollinator planting or something like that on their property. How do you navigate wetland laws? We had a wetland specialist there who was able to answer a lot of questions around wetland regulation. And so this was really just a time where we were able to meet landowners where they were at and give them the tools they needed to do what they wanted on their property. And so this was really about empowering individuals, helping them feel like they were given the resources they needed to be the best stewards of their land that they could be. Some other work that I've done with Anoka County, I personally, like my favorite thing that I've done for them has been organizing invasive species management, like volunteer events. And so one that was really fun was this buckthorn removal at the Springbrook Nature Center in Fridley. It was 0 degrees on that day, and I got like 30 middle schoolers and a couple of retired folks from Fridley to come out and lop buckthorn and put herbicide on it, and it was a blast. We had a lot of fun, cleared like close to an acre of buckthorn in a couple of hours, and it was just really great to get especially middle schoolers outside in the winter, one, because just going outside is really good for you, it turns out, and two, affecting their community in a positive way. The Springbrook Nature Center is really like the keystone part of a lot of environmental education that goes on in the southern part of our county. And so this was in a really visible area in the at the Nature Center that we were able to remove this buckthorn from. It opened up the view to the wetlands there. And additionally, just getting kids kind of dirty, which I think is really important. I think that with the way that we do a lot of our education around the environment, and your kid, there's this idea of the leave no trace, don't touch anything, is really great for when it comes to not just destroying things senselessly, but I think it creates this divide between the individual and the nature that you're trying to experience. And so this is like a really great way that we're able to get kids like, feeling trees and like digging around and moving things like stuff. And so it was really fun to just see a lot of them really embrace that and get dirty and have fun and get sweaty and feel like they had done something positive for their community. Really great aside, I went there this spring, and where we had cleared out buckthorn, that winter there was marsh marigolds like popping up. This is what I live for. And then in this other one, I worked with a 4-H group at the Anoka Nature Preserve, just pulled garlic mustard, and these kids went absolutely ham on that garlic mustard. I thought we were going to get through this one tiny area, and they ended up pulling like every single stem along this trail, and I was like, this is incredible. They were so enthusiastic. But again, the same idea, just getting people outside and getting them to connect with where they live, and connect with the nature and learn something too about invasive species. And so it gives them that great combo of feeling good about what they did and also learning something. And then they can have some of these kids like, next time I'm out here, I'm going to like pull garlic mustard and like do that. Right. And yeah. This next one is also really fun. So I worked with the outreach specialist at the Coon Creek Watershed District, a lesson on stormwater infiltration for 4th and 5th graders at the Anoka County Natural Resources field trip. We called it "We've Got the Dirt on Stormwater." It was really great. It was just trying to help kids understand the concept of permeable versus impermeable surfaces. So we had these little 2-liter bottles that had sand in them, and we ran water over them and showed them that we had holes in the bottom of it so the water drained through, and showed them that, in Anoka County, we have these really sandy soils, so we get really quick infiltration on our impermeable surfaces. This is much like the dirt we have in Anoka County, or soil, throughout, much of the county. And then we would put duct tape over the top of that and show them that that water runs off really quickly, and then we use various sprinkles and food colorings as pollution, and they were able to see how pollution moved over impermeable surfaces versus permeable surfaces, showing that soil can capture pollution and help that pollution not get into water bodies. So that was really fun. My favorite part about this was the kind of like secondary part of our lesson was teaching kids about the importance of wetlands. Anoka County has a lot of wetlands, but a lot of these kids are from areas like Blaine and Andover and Coon Rapids, areas that are experiencing a lot of development. And a lot of people don't really understand why wetlands are important and why we have so many laws around them. And so we wanted to really kind of try to show kids, like, hey, these things are important. They help mitigate floods. They help clean our water. They provide wildlife habitat. They're really special and important things. And so how do you teach kids about that without just like putting them to sleep or getting them screaming and running around? So we had the idea to bring a little cube, like a plastic cube of peat moss out, and I had asked for like a brave volunteer, reach his hands in and like pick up the peat moss and hold it, and I had kids, each one of them guess what would happen when they squeezed the peat moss. And everyone's like freaking out, this is so gross, whatever. But I think you've done this before, when you hold peat moss in your hand and squeeze it out, it just rings out like a sponge. And so these kids were just like mind blown. It was like, everyone was like, oh, I want to touch it, I want to touch it, I want to touch it, I want to squeeze it. And so every time I'd send a group of kids through, I'd have all these like angry chaperones and parents. Why are you getting my kids covered in mud? But again, it was like really a great way to find a way to talk about wetlands and this kind of like boring high-level science thing for 4th and 5th graders, but in a way that allows them to like feel engaged and to touch and experience their natural environment in a way that they probably haven't done before. And I think that helps to build this kind of personal, intrinsic connection to your own environment that you live in. Another thing I did, it was a little work with why am I blanking on climate generation. Their Youth Convening Minnesota program, I gave a short presentation and activity on the connection between invasive species and climate change, which was really fun. This one was I got to be a little bit more technical with it because this was like high schoolers who were all interested in environmentalism and climate change. It was really fun. We did a little activity that was like just demonstrating, it was like invasive species tag and showing how they like outcompete native plants. And then one that Emily and I over here, our Anoka County Outreach Coordinator, I'm going to just shout her out because she's awesome and does really great work. But we recently finished up a rain garden maintenance seminar series that we did at the Redeemer Lutheran Church in Fridley and the Rice Lake Elementary School in Minot Lakes. The goal of this was to sort of address an issue that a lot of folks have run into with, rain gardens are awesome, but only if they get maintained. If they don't get maintained, they kind of stop working pretty quickly. So that's been honestly one of the bigger outreach challenges of Anoka County is we've got a lot of rain gardens installed in the past 10 years. How do we reach all these people? How do we get them involved and engaged? And in a similar kind of idea to the conservation planning workshops, we wanted to use this as an event to give folks the tools they need to succeed. So we were able to give them a presentation on best seasonal practices for maintaining rain gardens. So the different things you need to do in spring, summer, fall, what types of plants are going to go in there well, what are maybe some weeds that you want to remove, ways to talk about your rain garden with your neighbors, ways to talk about your rain garden with people who might not like rain gardens or have misgivings about them. And so the goal of this was to really arm these folks who are doing a great service to their communities by having rain gardens and give them the tools they needed to succeed, empowering them with that knowledge in a way that is not intimidating, detailed but not technical. And then also we got to take them out to rain gardens at both of these locations, and we maintained the rain gardens at Redeemer Lutheran and Rice Lake Elementary, which was great because we got to take these things we learned and then implement them in a hands-on way. So address like different learning styles and also do community service that helps people feel good. And that's really important for motivating change. And the last thing I want to show you from my project was this animated groundwater video that I helped to write and produce. This, again, we were trying to take this pretty nebulous but very important idea, which is groundwater, that is hard to teach in a way that you can teach a lot of other natural resources because it's invisible to everyone. So we figured out that the animated video format might be the best way to talk about it. And this was just our attempt at trying to utilize these language techniques to reach folks and help people understand this natural resource that honestly everyone in Anoka County depends on for their water. Are you able to
Yeah, theoretically.
get that plan? Thank you. Yeah, that was our video. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more now about other GreenCorps members and some cool stuff that they have been up to. So first one I wanted to talk about Chris Gass. He actually gave a presentation here not too long ago. And Chris is up at the Carlton Soil and Water Conservation District, and he's been doing a lot of great work, both with developing an adopted drain program there, as well as working with a lot of school groups. Chris has been doing a lot of stuff that I really, really believe in, getting kids outside, getting kids to engage and learn about their local environments. He's done some water quality testing with middle school students and some invertebrate sampling with elementary schools. One of the challenges Chris talked about that he was facing is a thing that Emily and I honestly face a lot with Anoka County is how do we reach people and get them excited and ready to engage. Because I think once you get someone at the point where they're willing to listen to you talk or willing to do something, then it gets really easy. But how do you get that initial reaction? And Chris was kind of has been battling with this with his adopted drain program. How does he get folks to actually want to adopt their drain and to participate in that program? This next GreenCorps member, I don't know why that left photo is not popping up. There's supposed to be a photo on the left. Anywho, Yordi is with Metro Blooms. She does a lot of fantastic work around engaging communities with their with rain garden plantings and other stormwater BMPs. She and Metro Blooms have a really fantastic approach to the way that they do community engagement, where they come to communities not as government or nonprofit or an organization or agency telling the community what to do. Rather, the way that they do their public engagement is to build connections with community members and educate specific community leaders on topics around stormwater and stormwater BMPs, rain gardens, and the such, and then work with those community leaders to work with the community and have those community leaders take the role of directing the project and gathering information from the community, understanding what the community's needs and desires are. So no project with the way Metro Blooms does these community stormwater projects is the same, because they engineer everything to fit with what that individual community wants. So really working through that lens of trying to empower individuals to take action on their own, make their own decisions, which in turn is going to make them feel empowered and intrinsically motivated to do good work and take on the behavior changes like maintaining rain gardens that we need in order to keep our water clean. You can flip to the next slide.
Yep, now you're good.
Cool. So next one is Jess Brown. She's with the city of Rosemount. She actually is one of the first people, or is probably the first person in the city of Rosemount to see the benefit and need for public engagement as it pertains to natural resources. She's worked with a supervisor who is really resistant to that idea. So for her, a lot of the challenge was, how do I get stuff out there so that I can demonstrate to my supervisor the value of the stuff, that there are people who actually want to engage and care. So the way that she addressed a lot of her issues was to create spaces or events or activities that were highly visible to the public, so that they could create awareness to natural resources and the work that the city of Rosemount does to maintain those natural resources. So for one of the projects she did, they did a mural in a city park illustrating some stormwater concepts. And they worked with the local artists on that. The other thing they did was hire goats for a buckthorn control in the city of Rosemount. Again, and then had a community of buckthorn work day after that. But again, one of these very visible public things that allowed folks to see this, what she called a wow factor, that would draw people out and get them thinking and engaged. Next one is Kate Vasusinik. She is a member with Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota works with communities throughout the state to help them make their cities more bike-friendly and to encourage biking in their cities. And so she worked on, I think, 6 different projects where they went out to communities throughout the state of Minnesota and identified their biking infrastructure and talked with the community about their biking infrastructure and identified issues and then helped the community to solve those problems. So one particular city, and I can't remember which one it was up on the North Shore, they had a lot of bikeability in their city, but there was no signage for it. A lot of people didn't know where the trails were. So for them, a lot of the issue was just, addressing, tapping into that local knowledge and helping to empower people to make the changes that they saw a need for.
It's 2 Harvards.
2 Harvards, thank you. Maddie Muirfield, she's a member with Climate Generation. Here's actually a photo from our Invasive Species activity that I did with her. But she worked really heavily on the Youth Convening Minnesota program, which was, if any of you are familiar, a program that works with high school students at local high schools to put on a climate storytelling session that has different activities and information at it. And so Maddie worked directly with high school students to put on this entire youth convening conference at a couple of different high schools throughout the state of Minnesota, which is really cool because she's kind of working with these youth who are very engaged, really want to make a difference, and just need the resources to do so. And so she helped these students identify folks to come in to do storytelling, identify folks to come in to talk about climate change from a more scientific lens, helped these high school students to figure out their own climate stories, how do they talk about climate change with their friends and neighbors and family, and then eventually put on these conferences. And it's really awesome because it helps these students really feel empowered to be able to do something. They are given the tools and then really left to their own devices, and I think it's an awesome way to build up some folks who want to make positive changes around climate change. The other one was Jacob Keller. He's a member down with the Mauer Soil and Water Conservation District. Jacob organized a canoe-mobile event that brought students from, I think, every single school in Mauer County out to canoe on the river down there. And again, this is just the idea of trying to get people outside and engaged and active in their environments, and using that as a way to help facilitate change. Because once you have built this personal connection with the environment around you, that motivation to do positive behavior changes can come a lot more intrinsically. Laura Gold is a member with the Tree Trust. She also did some similar stuff, working with school groups, teaching them about trees, teaching school groups about the importance of trees, and then eventually planting trees with students. Similar concept, just engaging people with their natural environments, engaging them with where they live, and making improvements that help students feel good about what they've done and help them learn about these positive changes you can make to help the community through trees. Thank you. Questions?
With the very first event you talked about with the landowners, how did you advertise and get the word out about that? Did you go door to door?
We did direct mailings.
Direct
so we had that. We had a big spreadsheet of folks and then just sent out letters.
I really like the video. How have you been getting that out to the public as well?
Just every single person I know of who does anything with groundwater, just, hey, take this. We did Facebook promotion. Yeah, I would say our main strategy at this point has been reaching out to nonprofits and agencies that have social media presence and asking them to promote it through their various social media outlets.
Jaron, didn't Tillery do the
Oh, yes,
design?
great points. So some of the original storyboarding for that groundwater video was also done by Tillery Bailey, who's a GreenCorps member with the Cedar Creek Ecosystem Science Reserve. And she does a lot of environmental education there, but just so happens to have fantastic artistic talent. So she helped us do a lot of the early storyboarding for that video.
We have a question online. They want to know where they can find this information. Where did you get this from?
I got that from, oh, shoot.
Like it was an LCCMR project. I think it was
But
Minnesota.
Yes. Yeah, Center for Changing Landscapes and Bristol Public Affairs. I think if you just search Minnesota water values study Center for Changing Landscapes, this study will pop up.
I have a general question, Jaron. Great talk. I really like your talk. Seems like you put a lot of emphasis, that you have been putting a lot of emphasis on interacting with really young people in the community, with some efforts to interact also with landowners and older people.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of comment on where you think those efforts are best spent? It seems to me that it's easier to reach and change the behaviors of young people than older people. Is it that we just have to wait for older people to die off?
I don't think it's that we have to really wait for older people to die off. I think that you are absolutely correct. I think that I can work with a group of elementary school kids and get them all on the same page pretty quickly. And I think that that is maybe a more natural thing, just because they don't have these kind of learned skepticisms and like distrust of whatever. That being said, I would honestly say older folks have been some of the biggest movers and shakers in the community that I've worked with. I think that, folks who are retired have more time, and they've been some of my favorite people to work with. And so I think that it's not really productive to just wholesale say that older people, they're not worth talking to, that's not worth doing. Because I think that it absolutely is worth doing. I just think that we need to approach the issue in a different way. And I think that whereas with kids, you can approach it with fun and learning, with adults, it's much more important to meet them with values. Because kids don't necessarily have all their values figured out, but adults very much do.
So Jaron, was there follow-up with the landowners that came to the workshops?
Yeah, we did
you found from that, in terms of people actually going forward and implementing?
Yeah, we did some, I did send some surveys out that didn't get great participation immediately after. I will say that we have had several, I think part of that workshop was we offered a discount on our tree sale for everyone who came to the workshop. We had just about everyone who came buy trees. In addition to that, we have had these landowners reach out to us for technical support. I know one of them has a really, really fantastic black ash swamp that we're going to be doing some buckthorn work in this winter. They're working through our cost share programs for that. And I know many others have contacted us to purchase herbicide or to just ask general questions. So I think that the immediate response from that was okay, cool, they did learn something. Maybe not going to hear anything for a little while from everyone, but I think that we did build some really great relationships that are going to be really, really beneficial to the county and to the individuals moving forward.
How would you engage in these conversations with older folks who, say, are not landowners, who may be from a more, highly urbanized area, so who may not have initially may not have the intrinsic values for these things that you spoke of, what would be your approach as far as engaging in conversation with those folks?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The way that I have it's harder. It's definitely harder because when folks have their own land, you can use that as a talking point. I think that using maybe public spaces as a starting point. I know with the buckthorn removal at Springbrook Nature Center, we had a lot of folks who didn't own property but still came out because that was their like public space that was like nature and like an outdoor area they were able to use and that they cared about. So I think first try to go for that, like, you may not own your own land, but there's public land nearby you that is open for your use, and you should be a steward of that place for that reason. I think that's a great starting point. If someone isn't willing to engage on that, I think it's just important to find a value that they have that can translate in some way to a positive behavior change. Because the reality is not everyone really loves going outdoors and getting dirty and all of that, but everyone drinks water, everyone flushes the toilet, and I think it's just helping people understand that if it's even just, the things you do impact your drinking water and the safety of your family. So when you bring up safety and family, those are values that a lot of people have, and so even if you can meet someone there, I think that's a great starting point. Some more questions. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you listening to me ramble about stuff I like. So.
He's already